Let's go over to the United States of America, though, because an Alabama death row inmate is expected to become the first person in the United States to be executed with nitrogen gas after losing several last-minute appeals. 58-year-old Kenneth Eugene Smith was convicted in 1989 of murder. Smith would be the first person to be put to death by this method in the US, and according to the Death Penalty Information Centre, anywhere in the world. Joining me now is the Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Mr. Freddie Gray. Freddie, very good evening to you. Welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham.
Good evening, Mike.
I've been hearing about this story pretty much all day today, and many states in the United States now have given up on the death penalty, but Alabama obviously isn't one of them. But this is causing an awful lot of angst, isn't it, for people, even those who actually are in favour of the death penalty, because of the method that they're going to use.
Well, yes, because it seems to be untested, or at least we have no idea what the testing that's been done, the results are.
Right.
It's poisoning people with noxious nitrogen gas, so cutting out the oxygen so they just breathe nitrogen. And some experts say this is the most humane possible way to kill someone. Other experts say it's highly likely it could be extremely painful and an awful way to die. And it's an extraordinary situation that Alabama is about to try this on someone when it hasn't been tried. And I don't know where you are on the death penalty, Mike. I'm a bit of a softie. I'm against it.
Yeah.
But I think this is a particularly odd example. And it's interesting that America, although there's always been the death penalty, America's sort of federal death penalties faded out in America for a long time. And they appear to be coming back a little bit. Actually, it was under Donald Trump that they started to come back a little bit. And there have, in recent years, been failures, death penalties that went wrong. I believe it even happened to the criminal in this case.
Yes.
Last year. And so there's that brings up another legal question, which is if the state tries and fails to execute someone, can they try again?
Yeah.
These are very murky waters, and to me, it's very creepy stuff. I don't think we should be gassing people, particularly if we don't know what the effects might be, no matter how awful they may be, and no matter what terrible crimes they've done.
Yes, no, I'm like you. I mean, I am persuaded occasionally by arguments about paedophiles and child killers and people who cannot ever really be rehabilitated, and that we perhaps shouldn't spend an awful lot of money housing until the day that they die in some kind of penitentiary. But no, I'm like you. I'm a bit squeamish about the death penalty. And what I do know from my time working over in the US is that an awful lot of people spend an awful lot of time on death row, sometimes 20 years, sometimes 30 years, and it costs a great deal of money. I had one encounter with a death row sort of death chamber, if you like. I was once in Mississippi, and I was invited by the head of this prison to come down and do an interview with him about this new boot camp that he was running for sort of miscreant young people. And he said, you know, we've got an electric chair here. And I said, yeah, OK, I see. And he said, would you like to see it? So he took me into the place where the electric chair was and went, do you want to sit in it? And I went, well, not really. No, I don't really think I'd like to do that. That's not on my bucket list. And it was very weird because, as you know, people in America who are in favour of the death penalty think it's a great big joke. You know, I've been to prisons where executions have been carried out, and there's parties going on outside. You know, people are flipping hamburgers. You know, when Ted Bundy was executed, somebody was selling Bundy burgers outside the prison where it was going on. And there's bands playing, people drinking beer, and it's like a sort of tailgate party at a football match.
Well, it taps into a side of the American psyche that I think foreigners don't really understand. I mean, and I'd say the gun issue does this as well.
Yeah.
Americans do have a rather Wild West attitude to justice. And that means that, you know, brutal punishment can be accepted quite easily. I'm talking in extremely broad brushes here because it's a very controversial issue even in America.
Yeah.
But there certainly is this sort of, you know, to hell with them attitude. It's far more prevalent in America than it is in Europe. And it's very interesting to know why that is.
Yes.
And I think it's probably something to do with the sort of the frontier mindset that you have in America, that where, you know, justice was the only thing that could save you from quite brutal crimes.
Yes.
There's always this fear of, you know, the brutal monsters in out there in America.
Yes. And I think it does also kind of highlight the differences between Europe and America. You know, while certainly in Britain we count ourselves as, you know, having a special relationship with the US, and a lot of people, you know, go and live there and work there from here. A lot of Americans come and live in Britain. And, you know, there are many parts of America that are very similar to Europe, but there's large swathes of it which really aren't.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings us on to Donald Trump, really. He's in New York today. He's been up against Jean Carroll in that defamation case. Now, we're told that the judge has already ruled that he defamed her. This is a woman who claims that he sort of sexually assaulted her and then went on afterwards and defamed her. He's claiming he's never met her. The judge is about to make some kind of ruling as to what kind of damages he's going to have to pay. Do you think it's going to be expensive for him?
I think it probably will be because of the nature of this case. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary. First of all, on Monday night, I was in New Hampshire watching Trump give a victory speech, having won the primary. And there was no mention of this case, obviously. It was jubilant. You know, the mood was jubilant. He seemed jubilant. He threw lots of attacks at Nikki Haley, but he was in a sort of bullish mood.
Yes.
And then 2 days later, he'll be sitting in court in a rape trial, or a trial that's to do with rape. We should be clear, though, here, because I think a lot of Brits are now going around saying, you know, Trump has been found guilty of rape.
Yeah, he hasn't.
And he hasn't. He's been found civilly liable for sexual abuse, not criminal. It's not a criminal case. And this is to do with New York law, which was changed to favour historic allegations, to favour the claimant in historic allegations. And there are a lot of people, you have to be very careful what you say here legally, but there are a lot of people who think that there is something very strange about Jean Carroll. Jean Carroll, I should say. She has a peculiar backstory. She wrote an odd biography of Hunter S. Thompson, in which she created an alter ego for herself, who was then raped by Hunter S. Thompson. The scene that she describes that happened between her and Trump, what she claims was sexual abuse, was in fact very, very similar to an episode of Law and Order, the crime show that was aired a few years earlier.
Right.
She was asked about that, and she said it was just a coincidence. I mean, I'm not going to say whether I think this happened or not. We don't know. But the point is, it's a 25-year-old allegation. There is no evidence. There are no witnesses. She spoke to two friends at the time, and Trump's lawyers in court today have been pointing out that they have text messages between these three friends that do seem to imply they had an animus against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Again, that doesn't mean it didn't happen, but it's a very, very odd case. And I think, you know, as people look a bit further into it, they will start to think about it differently. And we should all be a little bit sort of cautious about, you know, calling Trump a rapist, because there is no evidence.
No, of course. And the burden of proof is far smaller, isn't it, for a civil case than it would ever be if it happened to be a criminal case. But you know as well as I do, Freddie, and we've got to let you go now. Unfortunately, we're out of time. But you know as well as I do, the people who do call him a rapist as a result of this case are people who just think Donald Trump is a ghastly individual, and they'll call him anything they can to get away with making out that he is a horrible, horrible man. But Freddie Gray, thank you very much indeed in the US there for The Spectator, telling us about the latest news on Donald Trump.